All right. How's it going, everyone? This is Anon. None of this is financial advice. This is for entertainment purposes only. I'm going to be reviewing Aterian ATER DD. Just want to kind of go over kind of what's happened and kind of show you where everything's at right now, and kind of give you just a breakdown of some just TA, some general information, because I think the stock's going to be starting to pick up again. So I just kind of want to fill you in on the backstory, what happened, what I think might happen going forward, and we'll kind of go from there. So, all right. So, right now, I want to break down a couple things and just kind of show you what happened. So, this is a stock that went basically had a huge dip in its very beginning, got pushed all the way down, hit a low of 142 before ripping all the way up to 49 a share, which, I mean, I have to go really far to get to this point. But, I mean, you can see it topped out around like 49 a share, right? So we can zoom out a little bit and I'll go back down. So it got basically killed, though, when shipping costs skyrocketed. And during that time, they violated basically one of their debt covenants was they had to have a certain amount of cash on hand. They were burning through cash pretty quickly, and so the stock got hammered down, right? So stock got hammered down, and it got just absolutely demolished in this time frame from basically from the January when it ran up in 2021, just got absolutely crushed, right? They had earnings on this date. They actually beat on earnings, but still got pushed down. And then this is where most people found out about Aterian. Back in August of 2021, stock hit a low of, I think it was like 304, and then got kind of some attention on Reddit and stock twits, and it took off and it squeezed because it was a very small float back then. It squeezed all the way up to 19, got hammered down, went up for a secondary squeeze, started writing DD around these days. Actually, it was prior to that. It was probably around these days. And I started kind of just following this stock. And this has kind of been the stock that I've been just keeping up with and kind of observing and, trading and just seeing, from just fascinating how this stock went from all the way up to 49 a share to basically 67 cents after it got hammered down. So, gets hammered down all this time, right? And everyone was like, oh my God, people were buying in $18, $19 a share. And I was telling people, I was like, at some point this is going to reverse because the stock price got really low and it consolidated for a while. And then I wrote a DD kind of explaining how floats work and all this stuff. And the stock kind of got some attention. Stock took off, ran back up to 7. And at this point, this was very interesting because the stock was trading something like from basically this date until this date. The stock traded over 1.5 billion shares in volume. So this huge volume spike here came out of nowhere. I'll be honest with you, that's very unusual for a stock that only had like a float of like at the time I think 30 to 40,000 or 30 to 40 million shares. So trading 1.5 billion shares during this time frame is very unusual, right? I don't know what the SEC was doing. This was on Reg Show again for the second time within a year, but what ends up happening is the stock gets hammered down and then they start diluting because they were running out of cash. And so they had to do dilutions in this time frame, right? So we had dilution back in this time frame, and then we had another round of dilution happen right here, which is what sent the stock down into this dismal level here. So during that time frame, they sold out warrants at 320 and They sold them also for this dip right here. They sold warrants at $2. Now, personally, I disagreed with the placement of where Aterian did those things, but for them, they wanted to get aggressive and start doing acquisitions, so they chose to dilute down there. So getting back to this, so the history of the stock is it's been on Reg Show twice within a year. Regulation, like basically, it's when a stock is trading and a certain percentage of the float is basically failing to deliver. So it's usually meaning that there's issues with liquidity on a stock like that. Now, back then, this was a squeeze play. Back then, this was a squeeze play as well. Now, because of all the dilution, Aterian's not so much a squeeze play, but a reversal at this point, and possibly a warrant run. And I'll kind of go into that a little bit more. But just know for right now, it had been consolidating in this range for a while. It took a dip down, and now we've actually started being in an uptrend. So the question is, what are they doing? Why did it get pushed back up over $1? And is this thing going to run up in the next couple weeks? Because this arrow right here represents when Armistice, who owns the warrants, when they can actually exercise these $2 warrants. So you think about it this way. If you're buying down these levels right here, for them to be profitable, they have to get above this blue line and this blue line for Armistice to get to be profitable. And what we know is the bank that did it, the underwriting for these warrants, they have a, let's say they have a clause that allows them to basically what's called stabilize their warrants. So they are legally allowed to push the stock price up to basically get it back to levels where those warrants are paid for the underwriter. So Craig Hallum's allowed to do that. So the question begs then is, where are we going with this thing? Is Aterian going to see some more upward pressure? And none of us know that for a fact. I mean, obviously this is not financial advice, but I'm just trying to explain to you what's kind of gone on from a technical perspective, and also kind of deep dive into this stock since I've been following it for, I don't know, like a year and a half, maybe almost 2 years now. So let's take a look back and kind of just cover the basics of Aterian. So at this point right now, the shares outstanding is about 80 million. We'll call it 81 million, just round up. And we know that roughly right now, 16 million shares are held by ownership. That gives you a lendable float of about 64 million. On top of that, I checked the the institutional ownership right now is currently sitting at about almost 22 million. So I plugged that in as well. So that gives you a free float, which is what Ortex uses, of roughly 42.8 million. So in addition to that, there is also almost 7 million shares shorted on this stock. So it's not a huge float. It's not a tiny float like it used to be, though, but it is still a smaller float than a lot of stocks that are out there. Because of that, we've got to take a look real quick at kind of the short interest, which has been climbing slowly over the last couple days. As the stock price starts getting higher, you'll probably see the short interest increase on this. But you can kind of see it was hovering around the 6.5 for a while, and now it's starting to creep up again as of the last release date, which was the 25th of January. This is a stock at one point that, when you had close to 8 million shares shorted, about here was about 8 million shares shorted, and, it was a pretty, this was one of the squeezes. It was close to 30% shorted, 40% at one point. Just a very interesting study on these growth stocks and watching them get hammered down, and because they basically, and we've seen this stock get spoofed. We've seen this stock just with very low volume just pressed down. Are they using actual shorts? Are they not? We don't know. The CEO claimed that they were going to be fighting naked shorts, kind of like the GNS guy had claimed, but he basically tweeted it out and then kind of followed up with they had at one point hired, I think, Share Intel to kind of take a look at their stock. But then after that, we never heard anything about it. He just went radio silent. We still haven't heard anything. Recently, though, he has actually said, I think his name's Yanov, he actually has said that he's going to this year, instead of taking a salary, he's putting 80% of his salary towards buying the stock. So he's only taking 20% in cash. The rest of it is going towards stock, which will technically lock up more of the stock because insiders have to be deducted out of the shares outstanding. So, him buying, this stock or putting, getting shares instead of cash, that kind of started this momentum back up. So let's take a look real quick now that we know some of the numbers. Let's take a look just kind of briefly at the chart and kind of see a couple things here. So we have been in an uptrend. They were anticipating, based off of what they basically said in the last couple of conference or earnings calls, that they plan to be, I think, positive EBITDA by third quarter. That's what they're aiming for. So, because shipping rates have come down significantly. So they're going to be, let's see. I think this is a different investment firm. Yeah, this is Aterian investment firm, but this is actually not from the Aterian we're talking about. But Ortex just, I don't think it's just grabbing headlines and it's not really looking to see which one is which. Yeah, it looks like there are a bunch of high call volume on Aterian options right now. That's why I think this is going to start moving pretty soon. So it looks like volume has started to pick up over the last couple of days. You also see options starting to pick up, which means that I think this thing's going to start moving. And you had these 2 days that kind of like signaled that they were running in the after hours and pre-market, and so since then it's kind of just been this like kind of slow, steady climb since they kind of set up the bat signal, almost like, I don't know if it's like, people alerting the other smart money like, hey, listen, there's going to be a little thing on this, because they want the stock price to get pushed up, because they need to basically, I'll go back to the chart. Did I close it? No, it's here. If you think about this, just logically, if you paid this much, right? So for you to even break even, this stock needs to go up to this blue line. Now, they can't unlock these $2 warrants until here. But these ones right here, right now, the 320 warrants, they are eligible right now. And Armistice, who owns these two sets of warrants, and Craig Halliam, who's the underwriter, they all got those shares at these prices right here in the blue. So they paid $190 for the $2 warrants, and they paid $290 for the 320 warrants. But for them to be profitable, once again, it has to be higher than this line. Now, Armistice right now is holding on to about 6 million shares right now on this blue line. So they will be profitable once this crosses over that blue line. Now, the question is, are they going to start, selling some there and then unlocking these sets of warrants? Or are they going to try to just push straight up, unload, and then they can already unlock these things? Kind of get retail excited, then hopefully they're going to try to probably sell those up here, and then they're going to go ahead and be able to unlock a bunch of warrants in the process. It was kind of my theory, because the last time Aterian ran up, Armistice at the time had just gotten their warrants. We thought that they were going to be along, possibly for a reversal, and then found out that during the last run up here to 7, they unloaded their entirety of their shares. They were the largest shareholder of Aterian, and they sold the entire thing out. So this time we've kind of got a better sense of who they are, what they do. So I'm kind of just calling out things as I see them. So we did have a small gap down here. Overall, though, there's a gap up here. There's actually a couple gaps on this chart. But anyway, back to kind of where I think this is going. I would imagine at this point they're going to want to get above these two lines. And I don't know which one's going to go first or if they'll wait for an earnings. So they do have an earnings coming up on roughly it was at the 8th of March. So sometime around that time frame. So it could be end of February, it could be in the beginning of March, but that's roughly about their time frame for earnings. So if the earnings is better than expected, you could see this push up, and then, they can unlock some of these warrants and they can unload the shares they want if they are going to do that. We don't know if they're long or short this time. Obviously, we hope they're long, but at the same time, we learned our lesson last time, which was, when the stock ran up here, we thought that they were, helping lock up the stuff and they just unloaded. Now, they only held the stock for, I believe, like 9 days. So they literally had just gotten all their shares and then unloaded their entirety of it, which begs the question, were they one of the ones that were short on this stock, helping it push it down so it would have to dilute at the weakest levels? And then they approach them and go, hey, listen, we know you're out of money. Why don't we go ahead and make out a deal? You guys give us some warrants, some pre-funded warrants and some regular warrants and some shares, and we'll go ahead and give you some cash because, not as many lenders are wanting to lend to companies that are not pulling a profit. So that's the question. Are they net short and they're just using these things to pump every once in a while, then they reshort it and then kind of push it down? We don't know because you don't have to report short interest. So like we don't get to see, oh, well, the same people that are lending out lending money out so they can get warrants, was it there to cover, possibly a position? Because that's kind of the game that these small caps go through is they have the only people that really want their shares badly, because most of these big institutions aren't buying it when they're not profitable. So they're basically sitting there dealing with short hedge funds, and they're like, who needs these shares? Oh, well, we have a client of ours who would like your shares, this Armistice Capital. And it could turn out down the line that if we ever got to see, they could be ones that are actually short and they use these warrants as a hedge. So just throwing that out there. So I think the immediate plan for right now is this. So just to kind of show you the dilution on this thing had like 21 million shares outstanding, and with the float, I think it was, it was a tiny float. And so they got in trouble around here, and they basically went from like 30 million shares outstanding to like 45, and then since then they've been slowly diluting with these warrants because, obviously that they needed the cash. They were burning through a lot of cash back when these, the shipping costs were just, absolutely through the roof. So you had warrants here, which is the most recent one. They're exercisable in 6 months. That would put us at basically April. And then you have these ones right here, which were the ones from March. They're eligible right now, and they were written at 320. So the stock price needs to be above 320 for them to unlock these 7 million shares. These 25 ones will probably never hit, to be honest with you, or at least not in the next couple of years. They expired in 2026. Obviously, this is 2023, so there is some time for that. But they would probably have to do a share buyback at this point to be able to get to that kind of like 25 range. And then these merger warrants, probably not. And there's not that many of them, so we don't really have to worry about it. This ATM is already terminated, and this shelf only has about 12 million left on it. So I had told, I wrote investor relations saying that, I think at this point, instead of letting these, these hedge funds, sell out from underneath you, you guys should probably raise an ATM and just have it in your pocket. That way, if we're up here, I'd rather be diluting up here than diluting down here, because that's what ended up happening was they dilute here and they get just punished after that. They diluted this day. It ran up to like 2 something, and then when they announced dilution the next day, it gapped down and then fell. And we have still not filled this gap up to 180s. So that's something we're going to see at this point is it will probably close this gap first, consolidate possibly around one of these pivot lines, and then could run back up. We just don't know kind of their timeline, but at this point, I think we've gotten a better sense of what's going on. Um, let's see if there's anything else that we need to really capture. I mean, the volume has picked up in the last couple of days. I do see a bunch of like ownership, or sorry, the options on this thing have been actually going up. So let's do this. Let me pull up real quick. ATER options chain. And I'll just show you that we're actually seeing the option chains growing, which is not a bad thing. You can see here. Here's your volume today. This is for, I believe, these are on the weeklies. So if the stock price gets, what's it called? Why aren't they showing open interest on this? I guess they haven't converted over any of the open interest. Let's try a different site. Options chain. There might be a better one than that one because it's not showing us open interest. Here we go. Open interest. So let's go ahead and move it to February 2023. Here are the ones. So as you can see, all of a sudden the open interest for this Friday is spiked up quite a bit, and especially the ones. Let's see if this will open up. That's that one. Let me just pull up the entire thing. Go to February. So this is the 150 strike. Let's do all. All right, here we go. So you can see right now, the open interest has grown quite a bit, and they're starting to stack up the 150s and the 2s. If you look here in the next couple of weeks, this is pretty weak, but this one actually started growing again. So, I mean, I think there's going to be some movement on the stock pretty soon. These are 150s. If they get, if they need to get hedged, they'll add some more shares being bought up on the market. So, this is a little bit, like I'd like a little more theta personally, but let's try some of the March ones and see what they look like. So this one just has the monthly on it right now. You can see right there, there's a bunch of 2s that have been bought up. Let's go to March. Right, these are all 2022, January, February, March. No April. Let's see what May looks like. Yeah, you can just see that they're starting to trickle in a little bit with some of these. May, August, that's pretty low. Then let's take a look at January 2024. So as you can see here, there's actually a good amount of 150s that are in the money now. There's a couple of deeper ones as well, and it looks like there's a target of like 250 and then 5. But I think if this starts building up down here and gives itself some time, then it'll be fun. It'll be decent. And then 2025 is even open, and you can see people are starting to stack these ones up here. So yeah, there's probably going to be some movement on the stock, and whether or not I can tell you right now, it's not retail doing it. I will say that at this point right now, if you look at, what's it? This one, let's see. Pull up if I can. Owners, retail ownership. I don't know if this is still the case, but if you looked at most owned, widely held stock, retail, and this is just like a handful of people in the Discord that signed up for this, but retail actually owns a good amount of this stock for at least just the handful of us that bought it. So if you look here, the retail float is roughly almost like 4.25%. So 4.25. You start looking at the average size, and these are in thousands. So the average size investment is around like 19,000. Yeah, so I mean, there's a lot. I mean, this is higher than AMC, Ape, or GameStop as far as percentage of the float. So it's interesting that this stock right now has a lot of retail holding it, and I think the next couple of weeks we're gonna see some sort of movement upwards. Whether or not they just go to this line, kind of sell in this range, then come back down, then go back up. We don't know, but I do know that at some point they're going to want to unlock these things. And so, the best way to do that is, for them to slowly, what stabilization essentially is they're pushing up the price by slapping the ass button. So they overpay for the stock just to move it up. You don't have to do it with that much volume either. You can just kind of just start pushing up the stock. And that's what these underwriters, I think, are doing, is helping out these warrant holders and themselves, because when they write a deal, they get a cut of shares too. So for them, they have an incentive to also push up the price as well. So, I can give the whole backstory of like what happened recently. I'll just kind of go over my old DD. Basically, what happened was shipping rates went 4 to 5 times their normal, rates. They were making record profits. The companies that were doing all the shipping containers, but it absolutely destroyed a small company like Aterian, who didn't have that priced into their model. And I feel like nobody really did. I mean, COVID kind of swung out and killed everyone all at the same time. It's just the big guys were able to kind of adapt better than, someone like Aterian, who was dealing with a lot of large bulk like containers, and the shipping rates were just astronomical. So it wasn't like built into their plan. So during these times, they had those couple run-ups, right? What's going on now has been basically they got pushed into the dirt, had to dilute down there. I just said I wasn't happy with that. Here's the breakdown. It's moved up to 16 million because Yana bought. The float, is that pretty close to what I got? 60. I've got 64 million for the lendable float. All right. So, and then I kind of just put out the balance sheets for everyone to see. If you want to look at this, it's on Reddit. It's pinned to the Aterian stock subreddit. This was earnings, and that I wrote basically cash is going to be very important at this point because they are burning still a lot of cash, at least the last check we've gotten. We'll know more after the earnings, but just kind of showed what's going on with the short interest, which we already talked about, and the warrants. I kind of spelled it out for everyone. Price target analysis on these things. They have about 317 for fair value on Morningstar. Craig Halliam just put out a buy, and I think they said that they thought the stock was worth 3. So more buys. There's one hold, no sells. So for a lot of people, they got into this for the squeeze, and they're pulling out their hair going, what's going on with the stock. So, I think the stock is going to move back up on this warrant run. And I called that out a couple, months ago, but I just wanted to let everyone know, they're probably, if you're not long this stock, there is going to be probably an exit point at some point coming up in the future. Just be aware of it. Besides that, normally I'm talking to some people through here, but I'm just recording this video on my own, just because I was absolutely beat yesterday. But if you have any interest in hanging out and talking stocks with us, or if you want to kind of go over research, I invite all of you guys that are listening to this to come join us. If you actually just want to just talk about Aterian in general, we have actually 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different like subgroups of Aterian. So we have the Aterian chat updates, the warrant information, short interest, technical analysis on it, and then we've got like a kind of like a catch-all. So I will put a link inside here if you ever want to join us and hang out. We don't bite. It's also free. We don't charge anything for it. It's just a bunch of us getting together talking about stocks. All right, so I'll put that inside the YouTube video, but yeah, come hang out with us. Join in if you want to know what's going on with the stock. We have people in there talking about it every day, and have been for the last couple, year and a half. So there's a lot of very knowledgeable people in there who have been tracking the stock for a long time. There's plenty of people who are just long completely. There are other people who were in it for the squeeze play, but have learned, and we've kind of gone over balance sheets each time, and just we enjoy talking about stocks with each other. Besides that, though, I'm going to cut this one a little bit short. There is more stuff that we need to go over, but with a new earnings coming out in a couple of weeks, probably not going to go in too deep inside the balance sheet. I'd rather have the updated information to kind of really deep dive into the balance sheet, because obviously things can change between now and then. So I'd rather have the most up to date information. Okay. So besides that, I'm going to wrap it up, and you guys have a great day or evening, wherever you're at, and I'll talk to you guys inside the Discord. All right, thanks. Bye-bye.